Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Weidman Bridge Town Hall, project number AR 1878. My name is Misty Bell, and I'm the Transportation Development Analyst for St. Louis County and the moderator for tonight's project discussion. This webinar is being recorded. To enable closed captioning, you can click on the More feature at the top of your screen, click on Language and Speech, then Show Live Captions. We're going to display a video that details the project and afterwards answer your questions. In the next few days, you'll be able to go out to the website and view a recording of this meeting. Please put any questions in the chat. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start the video.
Hello everyone, and thanks for your interest in the Weidman Bridge number 338 project. St. Louis County is the owner of this bridge. During this presentation, we'll provide a history of the bridge condition over the past 6 months, the current status, the planned reconstruction and safety improvements, the timeline for replacement, and the project costs. Afterward, we'll address any questions or comments that you have about the project. We are keeping this presentation concise to make sure we leave time for your questions and your feedback. Feel free to put those comments and questions in the chat window at any time so we can address them at the end. The Weidman Bridge is located in unincorporated St. Louis County, south of Manchester Road between Brayshire Drive and Dietrich Road. The bridge is a three-span structure that was built in 1973. It was approaching the end of its intended design life, but it was not yet programmed for replacement. County bridges are usually inspected on an annual basis, and the Weidman Bridge was on an increased inspection cycle of 4 months based on general condition. In November 2025, an inspection cycle indicated exposed steel, which posed a safety hazard. Once discovered, traffic was then shifted to avoid the damaged sections. The two images here show the location of the compromised beams on the north and the south spans. We'll keep this up for a few seconds so you can get a look at both of these images. Also in early November, county maintenance staff discovered a pothole that required daily patching. Inspectors visited the bridge and they determined that the pothole was related to the damage of the concrete beam below. The deterioration was on the top of a voided section in the structure, as shown here in the upper right figure. We'll give you a few moments to view this slide. This slide shows a steel plate over the pothole. The county added the plate to ensure that vehicles could pass over the span without driving over the pothole. Unfortunately, after 3 months of winter storms and snow, more potholes began to form. This image was taken in February 2026. You can see the new potholes just south of the steel plate. Because of the poor condition of the top of the concrete beams on the north span, keeping 2 lanes of traffic on the bridge was not a safe or workable option. St. Louis County chose to shift the bridge to one-way traffic. This decision was also influenced by the close connection to Manchester Road and the high volume of vehicles, more than 10,000 per day. Limiting traffic to one direction helped prevent backups that could interfere with the traffic signal and turn lanes on Manchester Road, which is actually owned and operated by MoDOT. After the change was made, several residents called with questions, including why northbound traffic was selected and whether temporary traffic signals could be installed at this location. The county considered this feedback, and then we proposed a detour route for the one-way traffic, using Carmen Road to the south. Since the county maintains this road, it allowed traffic control and message boards to be deployed more efficiently. Traffic was also modeled to determine if a temporary signal could function at the bridge, taking into account current traffic volume. The results indicated that a temporary signal was possible. The county made this change in early April 2026. In parallel with the traffic changes, over the past winter, county staff have worked diligently to solicit for a consultant to design and replace the structure. This effort started internally after the initial beam deterioration was discovered in November of 2025. The county prepared a solicitation for engineering services in December of 2025, with a consultant selected by January 2026. The contract for the design work is currently being completed, with the consultant slated to begin work in June of 2026. County staff also submitted a competitive grant application for construction funding. That was in February of 2026. The project was selected for federal funding, and that has resulted in a significant savings for county residents. The projected timeline for the bridge replacement is shown here, starting in June of 2026, with preliminary plans being completed by the end of the current year. Plans for property rights acquisition will then continue through July 2028. Historically, property rights acquisition is the larger portion of the project timeline. Final construction plan approval is tied to property rights acquisition completion. In other words, the project cannot move to the construction phase until all easements and property rights for the project have been obtained. Construction is estimated to start in February 2029, with completion later in that year. As noted earlier, county officials applied for a competitive grant and they successfully secured funding for this project. The federal contribution will account for approximately 80% of the construction costs. The federal portion is estimated at $2.3 million, with the county contribution being around $1.2 million. And that concludes our presentation. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to put your comments or questions in our chat window. We'll be happy to address them for you. Thank you.
Hey, we have some questions coming in to the chat window. The first one is, I may have missed this, but will the temporary signal remain in place until final construction begins and ends?
Yes, that is the current plan.
And the next question is, why so long for obtaining property rights? Just curious.
Maybe just historically, property acquisition can be lengthy depending on how many parcels are involved. It's just a process of getting appraisals, reaching out to affected parcel owners, and seeing what is required. So it's really no two projects are the same when it comes to property acquisition. So we're assuming a worst case for the timeline. In reality, it could be shorter, but it's really an unknown at this point. So it's really a bit of a wild card, but in most projects, historically, that's usually the longest phase.
And that goes along with the next question about property rights, low estimated costs. Shouldn't this just be replacing the same bridge, the same footprint? So what needs to be acquired?
It could be a temporary working room for a contractor to replace the structure. There are some cases where you might be putting in maybe a catch basin or something near the creek that might be needed for drainage, and we don't know that until we get a little bit further on in the design. So there might be a case for maybe temporary during construction, or it could be more permanent right away that's required for the footprint of the bridge itself. At this point, we don't quite know because we're still in the early phases of the project. But generally, we do anticipate some right away for the bridge replacement.
Again, another question of how long can the temporary signals remain in place? I think we answered that one already, that the temporary signals will have to remain in place until the bridge construction begins in about 3 years. Next question, how will traffic be handled during construction?
The bridge will be closed to construction or to traffic during replacement. There's no feasible way to keep it with the span being replaced, so it would be closed during that period of time.
Comment, I don't think that 3 years to get this issue addressed is acceptable. However, this is very typical of our St. Louis County transportation projects. Generally take anywhere 4 to 5 years, between getting the design completed and the construction completed. It's a typical span of at least 4 to 5 years.
And it's not mentioned, I think, in that timeline, more just for brevity, but in terms of speaking to the timeline itself, there are a lot of checks that are required to make sure that whenever we're doing work in an environmentally sensitive area such as a creek, we need to have that signed off by a number of different agencies. So it's not just the county that's involved, it's the Army Corps of Engineers, it's the Metropolitan Sewer District, could be a municipality if we're in not unincorporated. So I know it looks like there's just extra time in there for the design, but in reality, there is work being done kind of in the background in parallel for a lot of those pieces. So I know that's it's not very fun to hear. I know that civil projects generally take, as John had mentioned, several years from start to completion and construction, but it is in fact tied to a lot of that coordination with those other agencies, as well as the actual physical design. And then we mentioned the right-of-way step. So there are lots of pieces when we get down to the actual full schedule.
I have another comment. The present condition of the bridge will never last for 3 more years. So Dan, we may have to take other steps in between. What's your
Currently,
opinion on that?
the current condition is that it's taking traffic. It is inspected on a monthly basis. The hope is that it gets to the finish line when we get to construction. Is it possible that the condition could change over a winter? It could. So that's just something that we are very cognizant of. Certainly, safety is our #1 priority for the traveling public. So once we visit the bridge, if we deem it to be unsafe, we'll certainly take matters at that point. But what the future holds, as currently its status, it looks like it's holding. So we'll continue to monitor it and address it if need be in the future.
Another question on property rights. Why are property rights and easements needed for an existing bridge? Well, as mentioned, the bridge has actually, the design of the replacement bridge has not even begun yet. And typically, as Dan mentioned, there is giving the contractor the ability to enter the creek, enter the stream, get into the tearing out the old bridge sometimes can require additional property rights beyond just the bridge itself, the concrete structure. And so the surrounding areas can get involved, sometimes not very much, but there's property on all 4 corners of the bridge, you might say. So there's different property owners involved directly in that construction work. The next question, you said construction would begin in 2029. The format said 2027, which is right. I believe 2029 is the correct time frame. I'm not sure if we would look at the next slide there, Misty. I believe it shows the construction start in February of 2029.
Maybe it was the final plans being due.
It may have been maybe the final plans are in 2027. And this bridge will, as Dan mentioned, there's other agencies involved. MoDOT will be heavily involved in the review of this design and the plans as it progresses through the life of the design. Next question, how long would the bridge be estimated to be closed once the project starts? Well, and what are the plans regarding alternative routes along with resident insurance that other projects won't disrupt the temporary flow of traffic? That is Manchester Road Sidewalk project, for
Good
instance.
question. Again, I think that MoDOT is currently working on that project to replace the sidewalk sections on Manchester for more pedestrian and walkers and bikers. We do interact with MoDOT on a frequent basis to try to ensure that, like you mentioned, once we get to 29 and we have to close the road to replace the bridge, and it's anticipated there in basically one construction season, make sure that the alternate routes are not going to be under construction during the same time. So interdepartmental coordination with ourselves and MoDOT to make sure that that would not be an issue, so that when we set the detour routes that they are viable options. Now I mentioned obviously Carmen Road, which is county owned, but that obviously feeds to the two MoDOT routes on 141 or on was it Dorset or what's the one on the east side that's escaping me?
Dealman or Dietrich, I'm sorry,
Dietrich.
Road.
The map was up earlier. I don't know if we can flip to that one,
Dietrich
Misty.
is, Dietrich to the east, and then
Barrett
Carmen
Station.
Road is to the south.
Barrett Station, yep, that's the one.
We have another comment about Weidman Road, beat to death, and it's turning our cars into rattle traps. What is the plan for Weidman Road? I'm sorry if I said Carmen, Weidman Road.
I know the part of the bridge reconstruction will be kind of the immediate limits outside of the stream itself. We do take readings countywide for road condition in order to program the roads that are in the worst shape, kind of moving forward. So that is something that we watch and rate on an annual basis. If it becomes an issue through the detour route, we obviously have local staff in our specific districts that could do some immediate patching, but that is something that we watch as well. So we certainly account for resurfacing projects as well as the bridge replacements.
Yeah, that being an arterial, it gets inspected each year. And it's not sure that we've done an inspection yet in 2026, but we will keep an eye out for it. And we do have a annual program where we apply for funding for project repairs or roadway resurfacing projects. And if it turns out to be a candidate, then we'll certainly get it on the list. Next question is, why does it seem like every action related to this bridge has been reactive rather than proactive? If the bridge was nearing the end of its life and inspections were happening every 4 months with known issues, why wasn't something done sooner?
Well, hindsight's always 2020. Again, when something begins to fail, why didn't you replace it before it got there? Certainly, with any public agency, we have many funding needs, and we try to program things as they're ending that end of life cycle. This one was nearing its end, but no one had the crystal ball that said on November 6th of 2025, this bridge is going to start to having issues. We were kind of chasing a few others that occurred due to that winter that occurred with the plowing of the snow, and that kind of turned up some of the asphalt, which didn't help things on the top side of the deck. But we are taking measures. Again, as we encountered a problem, we tried to address it. And then when they became compounding, we had to go down to the 1 lane.
Yeah, so fortunately we applied for funding, got that application ready to go starting in November last year, and then it was fortunately selected earlier this year. It was at least initially selected by the review agency, so we can proceed with then designing a replacement bridge. Question is, does St. Louis County have the funds, or how is it planned to be secured? We we are contributing about 20%, as this slide here shows you. The 80% of the construction costs and design are federally funded. So on our own, the county would not be able to do this as quickly. We wouldn't have the funds available to replace a bridge like this. So by applying for a federal grant, and it's a competitive program with all the surrounding counties in the St. Louis area, and all the municipalities in the St. Louis area, we were fortunate to be able to get this one selected for replacement, with 80% of those construction costs coming from federal dollars. Question, how did the condition become critical in such a short time frame? Well, I think, Dan, you mentioned that we inspect bridges typically once a year, but this one started to have issues, didn't it?
Yeah, there were some other items not shown, obviously, in the couple photos there that had increased it from the 1 year to a shorter time frame, but it wasn't yet critical. It wasn't until we found that critical steel that was exposed in November that required reassessment of the load carrying capacity.
A question is about what about a military type temporary bridge in parallel to the current bridge? It's such a small span. There has to be a way for a temporary crossing.
The issue there would be the right of way and off the stream. If you're either up or downstream, that's somebody else's property. So it would take time to even start that process. And that might take another year and a half, at which point we're almost close to the replacement timeline. Plus, you'd have to pay for the temporary bridge. So that would be added cost to the project.
Next question, if it doesn't take 1.5 years for property rights, is the plan to move up the construction dates?
In theory, yeah, we'll try to move as quick as we can through the various phases if there's a way to increase the timeline. We don't want to get anybody's hope up. We want to try to set realistic expectations of, this is our typical timeline for a project of this size. If it happens to be that it gets quicker in one of the phases, sure. I think everyone on the call and from the county would love to get the bridge replaced sooner than later. So we'll certainly work towards that. Again, no guarantees, but if it's a possibility, that's certainly something we would welcome.
Another question, did this bridge get missed on the 5-year review of bridges? Well, I don't believe so.
We inspect our bridges annually.
Yeah. Do you think this will be a larger project than the bridge? Weidman and the parking lots along it, McDonald's, the vet office are awful and don't stay repaired long. Is the issue more with Grand Glaze Creek? Is it causing subsidence issues? Does it need to be wider or have more supported banks?
No, in this case, I think it was just the age of the structure being built in 73. Just based on its condition, it's basically just approaching the end of its life, crossing the creek. I don't necessarily think it's an issue with Grand Glaze Creek itself. Mainly just the structure itself is in need of replacement.
And as far as extending or expanding the scope of the project. It's really only funded for the bridge work at this point and not an extensive amount of roadway pavement replacement either side. So for now, it's just the bridge that's funded for construction work. Next question is, while the bridge is closed for replacement, could a signal be added at the Manchester-Dietrich intersection to facilitate traffic to and from Manchester Road?
We don't actually own Manchester Road. That would be a MoDOT uh, issue. I don't know, Chris, if you could speak mainly a little more on that, maybe from an operations
Yeah,
standpoint.
there are a lot of obstacles. It would be MoDOT's call whether or not to do it, but there are some other challenges like proximity to other signals, the size of Manchester, et cetera, that would make that very unlikely for them to even approve it or even consider it.
Next question, will county work with MoDOT and Manchester, et cetera, to assure that temporary flow of traffic isn't further hampered during construction?
Probably a bit of a moot point. Again, during construction, the bridge will be closed. Again, when we think about the traffic flow in the immediate area during that, I would say it would be similar to kind of the map that's shown here, either taking Carmen to 141 or to Barrett Station. But indeed, sure, that's something we'll work with our agencies in the area to ensure that the disruption is as minimal as possible. I know there's going to be a ripple effect, certainly, once you close a bridge that takes that many cars per day. But we're trying to get it through as quick as we can.
Next question about property rights. Can't you just get an agreement from the adjacent property owners to just sign a waiver?
In theory, yes, until it's your property, and then it becomes real. I know it's easy to just point and say everyone should just agree that this is for the betterment of the, all agreed. But unfortunately, that's not the way it works in reality, because it just takes one person to be like, I've got a, grudge against the government for X, Y, Z. I have no idea. Insert reason here. In theory, yes, we should all be agreeable to getting the bridge done, but they may not be the case. We just don't know at this point.
Well, and Dan, we still have to go through the set process
Yeah,
to approach each property owner. There has to be an appraisal done, a fair offer made. There's a number of steps in working with property owners, and sometimes they result in a donation of the property and other, but but we still have to go through all the steps to get to that point where we can discuss compensation and things like that. So.
yeah. So there are procedural steps as well. It's not just go now and say, can you donate? And we don't even know what it is because again, the design isn't quite at that stage yet. So
next question is, why is this bridge replacement a surprise to MoDOT?
I don't think it is. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah, this is a county bridge. MoDOT really had other than oversight on the design side, MoDOT's not really involved with this bridge maintenance or repair or replacement project.
Yeah, MoDOT will only now be
directly.
involved because of the federal funding because we secured grant funding. MoDOT oversees that funding on behalf of FHWA. So MoDOT will be involved from that perspective, but it is a county bridge, so it's not a surprise to MoDOT, but they are going to be involved in steps along the way.
The next question, with the bridge closure imminent, what other detour options have been considered for that corridor? Has a stoplight at Dietrich Road in Manchester been considered as a way to help manage the traffic flow? I think we answered that one. We do have a detour plan in place, don't we, Dan? The next question, what changes can St. Louis County do to be more proactive in the future, because it seems like you waited too long to address this issue? Well, each of our bridges get inspected routinely on a regular 1 year basis. And if they begin to show signs, as this one did, then it becomes more frequent than that. So we are regularly inspecting bridges. Dan, how daily, weekly? We're always out in the field inspecting somewhere.
Yeah, we inspect this bridge on a monthly basis just to ensure everything is still safe to traverse for the public.
Um, One more question. Will the bridge be safe to travel for 3 years, or are there plans to make any temporary fixes?
That's the current plan, is to keep it in service between now and then. As I mentioned, we'll keep our wits about us to make sure that everything is still good from a load carrying capacity. Is that a guarantee? No, certainly depending on what happens in the next couple winters, and things could change. But that is the goal, was to keep the bridge operational in the current configuration.
Next comment is Weidman is an issue. It's poor workmanship on almost all road patches. The the last inspection was in September, and it's not in good shape. You are, you live there, you drive it a lot, and it's definitely in the poor condition rating. So that definitely will be compared to all the other roadways that we have in St. Louis County when it comes time for funding of resurfacing projects. There's quite a number of roadways in St. Louis County that are also in poor condition and need resurfacing. Next comment, second, we can get a temp signal at Dietrich Manchester once the bridge is closed, especially if Manchester traffic improvements will still be ongoing at that time. People trying to turn left onto Manchester is going to cause accidents, too much traffic, too much panic trying to find a hole to turn into.
As you can see, our detour plan doesn't include Dietrich, and we can't really estimate what drivers will do. I would not recommend using Dietrich as the access to Manchester Road for the reasons that are shown there. Uh, Try to be safe and use the 141 or Barrett Station.
The next question, are we sure of the federal money? What happens if that gets cut because of a gas tax holiday? At this point in time, we're fairly certain that we have the federal money. The project has been recommended for funding, and all things being equal, it should proceed without any hitch. Next question, comment is, when Weidman is out, can we ask Manchester Meadows South to let us use their light as a turnaround lane?
Chris, are you familiar with that location? I'm not sure where that's at right off
I'm not
the.
real sure about that one either. But I mean, we don't generally, if it's, I'm assuming it's private, we don't usually use private roads for detours, especially for collector arterial roadways to residential roadways. But I mean, I mean, without knowing exactly what that is, it's kind of hard to say.
Um, Next question is, if the bridge is too unsafe for both lanes to be open, how is it safe for one lane to be open?
The bridge is actually wide enough for 3 lanes. So if you've driven through the area, you'll notice it's a pretty big kind of zigzag Z motion. So we're taking traffic on the acceptable portions of the span that haven't been affected by the photos that we saw at the start of the presentation.
Another comment, however, with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, I hope this serves as an example of why contingency planning needs to start earlier and move faster. For example, the bridge was initially reduced to one lane and only after public feedback was a stoplight added. It seems like that should have been considered from the beginning rather than after the fact. Proactive planning would help avoid unnecessary confusion and traffic issues moving forward.
We certainly take those suggestions to heart. I think the initial gut reaction when we closed the bridge to one lane was basically try not to affect the intersection at Manchester Road because that might cause more backups and more confusion due to the active construction there with the sidewalk project. But certainly, I agree when we try to listen to the public's comments and address them as they come in. I certainly appreciate the ones that were forwarded to us.
The next question is, have adjacent property owners been contacted yet to get the process started?
Not yet. We're still early on in the design process. That will come once we get a better handle on the overall footprint of the replacement structure. So we are not quite at that stage yet.
A request to please raise the speed limit on Dietrich to 35 miles per hour. It would make it easier to use that road. You have to ride your brakes to stay at 25 miles per hour.
I don't speak on speed limits for roads, unfortunately. I'm sure there's a reason for the 25-mile-an-hour road there, whether it's sight distance or maybe just all the deer in my
Well,
neighborhood.
I think it comes down to it's a semi-residential and it was kind of designed that way. We can evaluate it, but I don't think, I mean, I'm not really sure I see that happening, but we can look at it. I don't think it's going to 35 just based on the roadway context and being through the residential area, but I mean, we could evaluate and see if 30 is more appropriate, and if it is, we can always suggest to the council. But at the end of the day, it's council's decision whether or not they take that any kind of recommendation or suggestion like that.
Another comment, but instead of more frequent inspections, that when you start the design process, um,
The design is in process with our consultant. The inspections are kind of parallel to that, but separate. And inspections are for safety on the existing structure, and then the design is kind of on a separate parallel track. So safety is very primary for all the school buses that go over the bridge, as well as single-family vehicles and others. So that's tied to the inspections.
another comment about the road surface on the bridge itself, it is very beat up and needs to be fixed. I think we're keeping an eye on that pretty closely, and if any additional potholes have appeared, they can be patched in the meantime while the design proceeds. The question, will you also be posting the slides so that they may be printed for reference? Yeah, following this meeting, meeting is being recorded in its entirety, and the slideshow and the recorded transcript of this meeting, the audio of this will be posted to the project website. The project is on the Department of Transportation and Public Works webpage. I'm going to put a link in the chat here. You can go to that link and see the more details on this project. And in a couple of days, this recording will be posted up there.
And I would add, as a brief aside, that's a good place to get the most current information on the project. I know in the age of social media, you can get some weird things kind of out there. Uh, if you need anything, please just bring it from the source, from the county's website. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly, have those addressed. So that's probably the best source of information between now and when the bridge is replaced.
Another comment on the prior question, the ZX Speedy Gas Station's DSW truck is a shopping center across from Home Depot, next light east of Weidman.
Yeah, I found that, and it would still require crossing Green Glaze Creek just to get to the parking lot for that. So, I mean, aside from the property issues and even the private property, you're still going across, building new road and new bridge across the creek and private property. So that's not really going to save anything.
Next question. There was a bridge replaced on Windcrest recently, and it was done half at a time so the traffic could still get to the offices. Why can't they be done on Weidman?
Windcrest, that was the the only way in, only one out, I believe, or the primary one. The other issue here for Weidman is that the damaged beams are kind of catacorner from each other, meaning if you close half the bridge, you couldn't cross on the other side because you have to kind of go diagonally across the span. So it's mainly a question of the condition of the existing bridge that wouldn't make that possible.
Another comment that how quickly the bridge road deck has deteriorated. It's going to have to be repaired virtually monthly. That may be that we're out there patching it on a more frequent basis here. Another comment, you can turn right onto Manchester from Dietrich and then turn into the DSW parking area and then get the light at the car wash and then turn left onto Manchester. It isn't ideal, but safer than trying to cross many lanes of traffic. That's a good point. There are ways around it. Another question, does the county zoning department consider material support prior to approving additional entities such as churches? That's a question for our planning and zoning folks, I suppose. The material support, I guess that's inferring property taxes, which I don't believe that's a criteria in the planning and zoning, but we can get back to you on that one if you want more information on that. Another last question is, if there was another bridge in the same area that needed major work, then would one bridge or another take precedent? 3+ years is way too long.
We kind of take each bridge individually. I don't know that one would take preference over another. From my point of view, it's mainly based on safety. So if there's a safety concern, we're going to program that bridge for replacement. If another one comes up that's similar condition, we'll kind of get that one next. So it's mainly a case by case basis.
Last comment, and I think I'll read this last comment, then Misty, maybe we could watch the slideshow presentation from beginning one more time. It's been a while, and in case others joined us and have not seen it, the last comment is have we not progressed enough when several beams need work that all the hoopla is to be done and taken? Well, we're working on a design to replace this one. It's a 50-year-old bridge that has reached the end of its time. So not unlike many other bridges. So Misty, if you would please, can you begin the video again, the slideshow? Thank you.
Absolutely. Did you want to mention also that you put that link to the project webpage in the chat?
Yeah, there is a link to the Weidman Road Bridge number 338 project website in this chat, and I'll put it in there again in case you missed it.
Replaying the video.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for your interest in the Weidman Road Bridge number 338 project. St. Louis County is the owner of this bridge. During this presentation, we'll provide a history of the bridge condition over the past 6 months, the current status, the planned reconstruction and safety improvements, the timeline for replacement, and the project costs. Afterward, we'll address any questions or comments that you have about the project. We are keeping this presentation concise to make sure we leave time for your questions and your feedback. Feel free to put those comments and questions in the chat window at any time so we can address them at the end. The Weidman Road Bridge is located in unincorporated St. Louis County, south of Manchester Road between Brayshire Drive and Dietrich Road. The bridge is a three-span structure that was built in 1973. It was approaching the end of its intended design life, but it was not yet programmed for replacement. County bridges are usually inspected on an annual basis, and the Weidman Road Bridge was on an increased inspection cycle of 4 months based on general condition. In November 2025, an inspection cycle indicated exposed steel, which posed a safety hazard. Once discovered, traffic was then shifted to avoid the damaged sections. The two images here show the location of the compromised beams on the north and the south spans. We'll keep this up for a few seconds so you can get a look at both of these images. Also in early November, county maintenance staff discovered a pothole that required daily patching. Inspectors visited the bridge and they determined that the pothole was related to the damage of the concrete beam below. The deterioration was on the top of a voided section in the structure, as shown here in the upper right figure. We'll give you a few moments to view this slide. This slide shows a steel plate over the pothole. The county added the plate to ensure that vehicles could pass over the span without driving over the pothole. Unfortunately, after 3 months of winter storms and snow, more potholes began to form. This image was taken in February 2026. You can see the new potholes just south of the steel plate. Because of the poor condition of the top of the concrete beams on the north span, keeping 2 lanes of traffic on the bridge was not a safe or workable option. St. Louis County chose to shift the bridge to one-way traffic. This decision was also influenced by the close connection to Manchester Road and the high volume of vehicles, more than 10,000 per day. Limiting traffic to one direction helped prevent backups that could interfere with the traffic signal and turn lanes on Manchester Road, which is actually owned and operated by MoDOT. After the change was made, several residents called with questions, including why northbound traffic was selected and whether temporary traffic signals could be installed at this location. The county considered this feedback, and then we proposed a detour route for the one-way traffic, using Carmen Road to the south. Since the county maintains this road, it allowed traffic control and message boards to be deployed more efficiently. Traffic was also modeled to determine if a temporary signal could function at the bridge, taking into account current traffic volume. The results indicated that a temporary signal was possible. The county made this change in early April 2026. In parallel with the traffic changes, over the past winter, county staff have worked diligently to solicit for a consultant to design and replace the structure. This effort started internally after the initial beam deterioration was discovered in November of 2025. The county prepared a solicitation for engineering services in December of 2025, with the consultant selected by January 2026. The contract for the design work is currently being completed, with the consultant slated to begin work in June of 2026. County staff also submitted a competitive grant application for construction funding. That was in February of 2026. The project was selected for federal funding, and that has resulted in a significant savings for county residents. The projected timeline for the bridge replacement is shown here, starting in June of 2026, with preliminary plans being completed by the end of the current year. Plans for property rights acquisition will then continue through July 2028. Historically, property rights acquisition is the larger portion of the project timeline. Final construction plan approval is tied to property rights acquisition completion. In other words, the project cannot move to the construction phase until all easements and property rights for the project have been obtained. Construction is estimated to start in February 2029, with completion later in that year. As noted earlier, county officials applied for a competitive grant and they successfully secured funding for this project. The federal contribution will account for approximately 80% of the construction costs. The federal portion is estimated at $2.3 million, with the county contribution being around $1.2 million. And that concludes our presentation. If you haven't done so already,
I apologize for that. It sounds like we had an abrupt ending to our slideshow presentation. There's been a few comments placed in the chat, so if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. But I noticed we had one individual had raised his hand, Mr. Jim G. If you could put your question in the chat, Jim, and we'll try and respond as best we can. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
So there's a question on the current truck weight limit. Would lowering it prolong the stability of the bridge? No, we're still at legal loads for the time being, mainly because the way we've directed traffic on the bridge is on the satisfactory beams. So at the current point, I don't see a benefit of reducing the weight carrying capacity.
I appreciate the thank you comment. Hopefully it does go faster than 3 years, but we've got a bit of work to do yet. Another comment about the bridge. It's like many other bridges nationwide. Not rocket science here to draw plans. Manchester has hundreds of thousands of cars daily. This timeline is totally unacceptable. With your 10,000 plus cars daily on just this road should supersede other work.
As I mentioned, it's a process. Again, it's not something that there's no easy button. There's not a, click your fingers and everything's replaced. Unfortunately, it does take coordination with other groups, and we certainly would like to get it replaced as quickly as we can. We certainly appreciate your patience. I know it's not anything that anybody likes to come about with their daily commute. So we certainly appreciate you tuning in and hearing the information on the bridge and what's gonna come forward in the next few years.
I would suggest that going to the project webpage and watching for any updates could be helpful to you as you want to watch how these things progress, how this project moves along, and get any updates you can from our webpage. If you have any specific questions related, at the bottom of the webpage is a contact information for the department. Our area engineer, Mr. Ray Golick, has his email and telephone number at the bottom of the project webpage link, and you can always reach out to him with any questions or comments on this project or any other projects, our roadways in St. Louis County that you have questions or comments on. So we appreciate that. We'd like to hear your feedback. We only got a couple minutes more to go. If you do have any other questions at this time, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, we do appreciate your attendance tonight. And thank you for all the questions. It's been a very good group. We do have one last question here. Why do we acquire property rights rather than building over the current structure? And I think we've answered that one, but again, the bridge itself is not very large, but in order to replace it, you have to tear out the old bridge, and oftentimes that's going to involve at least temporary work on private property on the four corners, each side of upstream and downstream, and each side of the bridge structure. There may be other more permanent easements as we get into the design of the replacement structure that we'll need to acquire before we can begin any construction work out here. Well, thank you all for attending. We're going to end this event. And again, if you wish to share it with your friends, family, or anyone else who wants to see it, it will be posted for your viewing in a couple of days on the county's project website, which again, I'll put the link here in the chat for you all. So thank you and good evening.